dawn of the reptilians came when dinosaurs, fearing extinction, hid within the earth to escape meteors. Just as mammals started to evolve into a more humanoid form, so did reptiles. Reptilians, reptoids, or lizard people are supposed reptilian humanoids, which play a prominent role in several conspiracy theories. Many claim that shape-shifting reptilian creatures control Earth by taking human form to infiltrate governments and manipulate human societies. Mankind has chronicled these reptilian beings throughout history. Several ancient peoples all over the world have described reptilian beings, and some have described reptilian humanoids. Common in numerous mythologies are stories of reptilian creatures who are often, but not always, hostile to human beings. Also rather common is the legend of the serpents of wisdom who enlightened humanity before the dawn of civilization. Archaeologists have found 7,000-year-old humanoid lizard statues in Mesopotamia. Zulu shamans hold the belief that Earth is controlled by Chitauri, a shadowy saurian force. Hopi Indian tribal elders refer to ancient reptilians as snake brothers. 20,000 years ago, the reptilians built their empire and supposedly came to rule over early human civilizations, but they were eventually toppled after a long war. They plotted to infiltrate human society where they again ruled, but this time from the shadows. The remnants of this defeated civilization migrated to the caves and caverns deep within the hollow earth. The population became divided, with one half wishing to leave and the other half wanting to stay on Earth. The half wishing to leave were allowed to do so. They used a combination of human technology and their own to vacate Earth and find a new home. These reptilians seem to have brokered an accord with the intergalactic Greys. The goal of this alliance is currently unknown. Back on Earth, the remaining reptoids erected massive subterranean cities throughout the southwestern United States, Mexico, and Central America. One such city is reportedly set underneath a modern-day California metropolis. In the 1930s, mining engineer G. Warren Shuffelt invented a device that used radio frequencies to find buried materials. Through electrical signal scans, he could unveil abnormalities deep within the Earth. By the summer of 1933, Shuffelt began scouring local areas in pursuit of oil and rare minerals. While inspecting downtown Los Angeles, his apparatus revealed an odd structure beneath the public library. He then examined the surrounding land. What he found was an extensive maze of tunnels, twisting miles below the surface. Excavators spent weeks and weeks investigating the underground villages and drew a map detailing its layout. Strangely, the settlement was built in the shape of a lizard. Reptilian sightings are global phenomena, but often aren't abduction-related. Many witnesses appear to be normal people living normal lives. Reptoids seem to want to make their presence known to humanity, albeit in a subtle sense. Signs that someone is a reptilian posing as human are piercing green or hazel eyes that change color like a chameleon, low pulse, low blood pressure, keen sight or hearing, extra ribs or vertebrae, and the ability to disrupt electrical devices. In the early 1940s, the mining town of Dixonville, Pennsylvania, was host to a subterranean reptoid sighting. 2 mine inspectors were notified about a mine shaft that had collapsed. 15 local coal miners were now trapped under the ground. Time was of the essence. What the 2 inspectors would encounter in that mine would haunt them the rest of their days. The pair had noticed a broken beam with debris all around it. Strewn atop that heap was the corpse of one of the missing miners. This baffled the inspectors, as they knew that a cave in this small a magnitude wasn't enough to kill a man. Terrifying details came to light as the inspectors further examined the body. Gashes from what seemed like giant claws were found all over the victim. The 2 inspectors knew they had to move on in order to find any survivors. As the mission progressed, More bodies were discovered. They were all covered in the same mysterious, deadly wounds. The search continued for days with additional manpower. None of the remaining miners were found. 3 cyclists were riding along a 17-mile trail known as the 24 Hours in Arizona's Sonora Desert when they spotted a bizarre creature as they stopped for a break. One of the cyclists went off on his own to answer nature's call. While he was away, his comrades noticed what they say was a 6-foot-tall, thin bipedal lizard that walked with an awkward gait. The first cyclist returned and surprise overtook him. He let out a gasp of shock which made the creature turn its head toward the whole group. This strange entity seemed to be watching them cautiously. Its eyes are described as snake-like, black with a yellow slit running down the middle. It was covered in green and red scales, with 2 nostrils on its face, where a human nose would normally be. Red scales surrounded its mouth, and it had no external ears to speak of. The creature vanished from the sight of the 3 men just as quickly as it had appeared. Antonio Huneeus, a respected journalist and chronicler of the strange in Sao Paulo, Brazil, recounts an incident in 1980. Prior to this incident, Antonio states that he was being followed by 3 men dressed in fine black suits. One night, a black car parked in front of his home. Antonio was forced into the car and he was driven to a secluded area. The car stopped underneath a massive aircraft hovering above. Antonio exited the car, escorted by the men in suits. As they left the car, the group was surrounded by a large cylinder of light. Once Antonio was aboard the craft, he was restrained by being tied to a chair. Antonio says the 3 men in the black suits then shed their human skin and morphed into humanoid creatures with reptilian features such as green, scaly skin and odd-shaped heads. Antonio turned his head and gazed in horror as he peered into the next room. Human corpses had been strung up by their feet. Antonio recalls the Reptoid speaking to him about the future, but he has no memory of how he ended up back home. At the time of its discovery in 1995, the Sundong Cave was thought to be so enormous that it could not be explored fully with the technology of the time. The cave stands at over 490 feet high and 650 feet wide, and it was opened up for public tours in 2013. Several bizarre reports of strange creatures skulking around the caves have come to light since then. A tourist who encountered one of the beasts described it as a devil creature with the body of a man, but the head like a dragon or lizard. This report is interesting because of striking similarities with one filed by U.S. Army troops in South Vietnam in the 1970s. The troops claim to have seen a 7-foot-tall upright lizard humanoid at the mouth of a cave. Soldiers fired upon the creature, but it seems as though it escaped unharmed as no body or blood was discovered. One of the soldiers says his unit was never debriefed on this, leading him to believe that this incident was to be covered up. A certified geologist named Gregor recalls an incident in a salt cave located in his native Austria. Gregor's comrade had recently found said cave and Gregor had gone to collect mineral samples. As Gregor chipped away at the cave wall with his pick, he says he heard voices faintly reverberating through the cave. He thought they might have been normal Doppler echoes typically found in caves and caverns. That is, until he descended deeper into the cave. The voices started again, and they were clearer than before. Gregor stood still for a long moment until the voices stopped. Gregor continued to press on, eventually finding himself close to a kraal. Deeper still was a large chamber, large enough to hold several people according to Gregor. On either side of the chamber were 2 large openings. What was extraordinary about these openings is that they looked like they had been bored into the rock by a machine. Gregor also noted a pungent, rotting odor emanated from the space, and an eerie red glow illuminated the floor. He bent down to collect a sample. Voices were now coming from one of the openings. Gregor started to panic as he squeezed himself into a narrow passage and hid. A series of yellow lights began to pour in from the left opening of the chamber. That's when Gregor saw them. Muscular, upright humanoid lizards of varying heights were congregating. They also varied in skin tone, but wore what looked to be a uniform. Paralyzed with fear, Gregor heard the Reptoid speak in an unusual language he had never heard before. Gregor surmises there were at least 20 of the creatures present in the chamber. Gregor eventually left the cave, baffled by what he witnessed. Reptilians supposedly have access to technological advancements far beyond the realm of human science. Some say this helps them tighten their metaphorical grip on the masses. These advancements include, but are not limited to, life extension. Much like lizards or salamanders, reptoids have obtained the means to activate rapid cell division, making it possible for them to regrow lost limbs and regenerate tissues. This has supposedly granted them supernatural levels of longevity. Holograms. Reptilians may possess the technology to project giant holograms, which could be used for wide-scale deception. Shapeshifting. Reptilian shapeshifting is theorized to be a technologically assisted biological process. Reptoids have enhanced innate genetic camouflaging mechanisms in order to better infiltrate human societies.